It's a beautiful day, a beautiful fall day in Abbotsford. Look at the colors of the leaves out here. Just unbelievable. So we're gonna walk and talk about renting versus owning, okay? I'm gonna give you my opinion, unfiltered of course biased because I am a realtor. But I held this opinion long before I got a real estate license. So in my opinion, the first step to building wealth, well, you could say it's a principal residence. The actual first step would be having an income that far exceeds your expenses, would probably be the very first step in building wealth. And if that means having to up your income or lowering your expenses, that would be the true first step. But I think one of the first steps that you would want to do, hold on here, we're at a stalemate. One of the first steps that you would probably want to do is buy a home to live in. I'll give you an example. I always wanted to go really big on the stock market, but I never could because in my mind, I wanted to own a detached home. That was a goal of mine. I just knew that at some point I wanted to live in a detached home. It's a goal I've had since I was like 19 years old. And because I was always like a couple years away from buying that next home, I didn't want to invest in the stock market. And the reason being is that if you can't hold a stock for at least 3 years, I don't think there's any point in buying it. If you buy a stock with a 1-year outlook, that's how you end up buying high and selling low. I've been there, I've tried it, happens every freaking time, right? So for me, it felt like I couldn't truly start investing until I owned that home base, that home that I knew I was going to live in or be okay living in for the next 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Now, what people will say today is it's way cheaper to rent than it is to own, so just rent and invest the money, which I agree with, and I think it works for a lot of people. I'll tell you why it doesn't work for me and why I don't like that whatsoever. I am willing to pay almost any amount of money to not have somebody have control over where I live, right? Like as an example, and this happens all the time, tenant has basically been accommodating showings for like the last year and a half because the condo hasn't sold. And now they've just gotten so sick of it that they're moving out. To me, that's a freaking nightmare. I don't want to rent something and then suddenly the landlord needs to sell because they've done something or they need the money or something happens in their life that causes them to sell where I'm living. And now all of a sudden I'm accommodating showings every weekend and on my evenings after work, or you know what I mean? Or in the worst case, they sell and then I have to move. To me, I'm willing to pay an extra $1,500 a month to not have to deal with that. I am more than willing to pay for that. And it's not actually $1,500 because you get some of it back when you pay down the mortgage, right? Like as an example, a 2-bedroom condo might cost, I don't know, $3,000 all in, strata fees, property taxes, mortgage, maybe $3,200. And to rent that same condo, it's like $2,200. So if you own it, you're paying $1,000 more than if you want to rent it. But you might get $600 a month back on the mortgage pay down. So you're net really paying $400 a month. Well, I am down. I will always be down to pay $400 a month to have control over where and how long I want to live somewhere, especially for people that have family. And that's why today, despite renting being so much cheaper, people are still buying because they don't want to deal with that. Check this out. So this is what's nice about Abbotsford. It's very mountainous. It's geographically very pretty. It's just at the back of my neighborhood here. And I think a lot of people forget that they expect that owning should almost be cheaper than renting. Or maybe the price should be closer, the gap should be closer. In Vancouver, just like any other major metro area, renting is always cheaper than owning. And I think the reason why that is if you're a landlord and you own a rental property in Vancouver, you're basically paying for the low vacancy. So you're getting a really bad cap rate, like frickin' 3%, but you know you're always going to find a tenant and you're always going to be able to find a decent tenant. Whereas if you buy somewhere random in Alberta, some suburban market in Alberta, the rent is going to be more expensive than the actual mortgage payments. You're going to cash flow positively, but your vacancy might be like 8%, right? There's not as many tenants to choose from. There's not as much. Is that how it works? Let me think about that. There's not as many tenants to choose from. There's not as many landlords, is what the problem is. There's less supply of people willing to be landlords that far out of the city, that the people who are willing to be landlords get a bigger reward for taking on more risk, I think. But the point I'm getting at here is that renting will always be cheaper than owning. Today, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, that's probably not going to change. And you have to decide when you are going to take that leap and pay more to be an owner. You pay more today, but 7-8 years in the future, you'll be paying less than whatever the current cost is of rent at that time. So when you're an owner, it's kind of like, how can I explain this? It's a very safe way at setting yourself up for the future. Yes, you can supercharge your wealth by renting and investing in the stock market or crypto or silver, any of these other things. And you would probably, if you do things right, you'd probably have a lot more money than if you owned real estate in the next 7 or 8 years. There's also a chance you may not. You may squander that. And then in 7 years, you're going to be paying more for rent and the cost of home ownership will have gone up as well. So now your two options are pay more or pay more. Whereas if you were an owner, you could at least probably enjoy what would be a lower mortgage payment, a mortgage payment that is substantially cheaper than the cost to rent that same home 7 years into the future. So this is what I think the debate should be about as of today. I don't think the debate is about ROI anymore. I don't think it's about making money. I think if you want to make more money, you are probably better off renting and investing the difference right now. That may not be true in 2 years. That may not be true in a year. That may not be true in 3 years. Right now, today, you're probably better off renting and investing the difference for the purpose of making money. Now, if you're somebody like me who's not okay with somebody else having control over the place where they live, then it is always worth it to pay the premium to own where you live. You're probably still going to make money. You're still going to pay down your mortgage. In 8 years, the price of that real estate is probably going to be higher, at least nominally, than it is today. Maybe your wealth won't be as much as what it could have been, but you didn't get kicked out of your house 5 times. You didn't have to move 5 times. You want a German Shepherd. You can have a German Shepherd. You don't want your kid to have to move school districts because you couldn't rent another place in the same school district, or you now have to drive 30 minutes to drop your kid off at school because you got kicked out of the last house. If you don't want to deal with any of that shit, it is always worth it to be an owner of real estate. And maybe you'll make less money because of that, but I still think you'll make some money, right? And there's no guarantee that if you rent and invest the difference, you will be wealthier. I just think there's a higher probability that you'll be wealthier if you do that. But you could screw it all up and lose everything and be stuck with nothing, and then in 7 years be renting and broke and lost all your money investing, right? So pick your poison. But I don't know. What do you guys think? I think I know what you think. I think you hate real estate. I think you probably hate Canada. You don't think anybody should ever own it. It's garbage. That's my guess, but let me know. What do you think? And if you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe. If you want to chat with me about buying or selling real estate, link down in the description. I'm that Agent Kelly. I'm making moves to move you.